Hello, welcome to the 5th edition of our video history of Leicester City as told through its memorabilia. Last week we took the story up to the end of the 1920s, a golden age for Leicester City. In 1928 the club had finished third in the old First Division, and in 1929 they had finished runners-up. We start the story this week in 1930 and we take the story up to the outbreak of the Second World War. In 1930 the club finished 8th, but at the end of that season there was a real bombshell. The captain of the club and one of the stars of the 1920s, Johnny Duncan, left the club in less than happy circumstances. He wanted to run a pub called the Turk's Head, which was just opposite the gates of Leicester Jail. His contract specifically forbade him, or forbade any player, to run any business or live in any accommodation which the club deemed unsuitable. There was a standoff between Johnny Duncan and the club. The club decided that Johnny had effectively terminated his contract, and Johnny never played for the club again, although he did become their manager 20 years later, or nearly 20 years later. In the close season in the summer of 1931, Ernie Hine, Leicester City's England international forward, was chosen to go on the FA tour to Canada, and courtesy of his family we have in the club's collection the itinerary of that tour, and you can see here the actual arrangements for the journey across, the 7-day journey across the Atlantic Ocean to Canada, and also his cap that was awarded to him after that tour. The following season, 1931-32, was not a good season for Leicester City. Johnny Duncan, the captain, was missing. He was running his pub. In November 1931, the long-serving trainer of the club, Dave Gardner, seen here in the photograph on the left, sitting next to Johnny Duncan and Reg Osborne, he died suddenly on the Long Cliff golf course. In January 1932, with the club struggling in 19th position in the First Division, Willie Orr, the manager who had taken them to the runners-up spot a couple of years earlier, left the club, and he was replaced by a returning Peter Hutch. Peter Hutch returned from Manchester City, where he had been manager. In Stonygate, in a private house, there is the desk that Peter Hutch was awarded by Manchester City as a leaving present, and you can see the desk here and the little plaque on it explaining what the desk, explaining that the desk was a present to him. The club did manage to avoid relegation that season, and a hope for the future was a rising star. This was Sepp Smith. Now Sepp Smith, he was called Septimus because he was the 7th son of a coal mining family up in Whitburn in the northeast, had joined Leicester City as a 17-year-old and had already made his debut, but he was now beginning to make an impact on the side. He was a superb player. He can be seen here in a sort of a portrait from the 1930s, and it can also be seen here training with his colleagues Hugh Adcock, Arthur Chandler, Arthur Lockett and Len Barry. Smith actually stayed at Leicester for 20 years. He became a legend at the club, and he also became an England international. So although it was a disappointing season, he was a bit of a hope for the future. The 1932-33 season was also a bad one for Leicester City. They were near the bottom of the table at the mid-season mark, but for the second half of the season Leicester City had signed 2 significant players who helped the club avoid relegation. The first of these was Arthur Moore, spelt M-A-W, who was a goal-scoring forward from Notts County, and he helped the club because in his 18 games in the second half of the season he scored 14 goals. The second significant signing, around about the same time, mid-season, was Scotland international goalkeeper Sundy Mclaren, pictured here on the front of Sports Budget magazine, who went on to be a key player for Leicester throughout the decade, playing in over 250 games. They did avoid relegation that season, but they had a difficult season the following season too, in 1933-1934. Arthur Moore's goal scoring, however, did get him a place as travelling reserve in the England side for the international in Belfast against Northern Ireland in October 1933, and you can see him on this photograph on the back row, not in his kit but in his suit as a travelling reserve, second in from the right. Interestingly, the player on the front row, fourth from the right, was Derby County's Jack Bauer, who had such an impact for Leicester City later on in that decade. We'll return to him later. Although they were disappointing in the league, Leicester City did get through to their first ever FA Cup semi-final that season, and it was remarkable because it was against Portsmouth, and playing for Portsmouth were Sepp Smith's two brothers, Willie and Jack. Jack was an England international, and this probably, I've not checked it, but this is probably the only time we've had three brothers playing in the same FA Cup semi-final. It certainly got the national headlines. In the end, in the match at St Andrews in front of 66,500, Sepp, the Leicester player, was on the losing side. Portsmouth beat Leicester City 4-1. At the end of the season, with the club again in a lowly position, the club was absolutely shocked that summer, in the summer of 1934, when Peter Hodge, their manager, returning to Scotland on football business, doing some scouting, the director's minutes indicate that was his purpose, fell ill and died. And it was a huge blow to the club. His funeral was in Perth. Here we've got two newspaper cuttings from the time. You can see Leicester City players, Mclaren, Lockett, Chandler and Black, acting as pallbearers for Peter Hodge's coffin, and you can also see another picture of the funeral in Perth. This was a huge blow to Leicester City. And with Peter Hodge's death, the club had to start the new season with a new manager. The man chosen to succeed Peter Hodge as Leicester City's manager was Arthur Lockett. He was a big name at the club. He had been signed from Manchester United for a fee of £3,300 in 1923. Throughout the 20s and early 30s he'd scored 114 goals for the club. He was actually a qualified teacher, although there's no evidence that he did actually teach. And he also ran, with his brother, a radio, music and record shop in Lowsby Lane, as you can see from this advert. However, the season didn't go well for the team. By March they were bottom or near the bottom of the table. Arthur Lockett decided to strengthen the side by signing two players. The first one, second left on this photograph, was Eugene O Callaghan, who was a Wales international from Tottenham Hotspur. He had actually played in the Spurs side in that FA Cup tie when there'd been the record crowd at Filbert Street that we looked at last week. The other player he signed, first from the right of this photograph, was Tony Carroll, a Scotsman signed from Clyde. Despite the addition of these two players, though, the club was still relegated at the end of the season along with Tottenham Hotspur. The summer of 1935 was significant for Leicester City, not only because the team was relegated, it was also the 50th anniversary of the Silver Jubilee of the club, and the club published this booklet to mark the occasion. And it also saw the departure of three huge players for Leicester City who had done so much to have the golden era of the 1920s. Arthur Chandler, who signed in 1923 and had scored a club record 273 goals for the club, went to Notts County. Hugh Adcock, England international, also signed in 1923, played 460 games for the club. He went to Bristol Rovers. And Adam Black, who had signed in 1920 and had made a record 528 league appearances for the club, left to go, well, he retired, and he bought a newsagent shop near Filbert Street in Wilberforce Road, off Upperton Road. We have the paperwork, or we've seen the paperwork, that secured this purchase for £800 of this shop for Adam, tobacco and newsagent shop. And he actually ran this shop for many years. The shop today has been converted into a house, but even today you can see a ghost sign on the wall that indicated its former existence as Adams' newsagents and tobacconist shop. So the 1935-36 season was the first season Leicester City had played outside the top division for 10 years. They didn't actually get promoted straight back that season, they finished 6th. Sepp Smith's career though continued to develop. In August 1935 he was selected for an unofficial international against Scotland at Hampden Park. It was a Jubilee international, not for Leicester City's Jubilee but for King George V's Jubilee, and in front of 120,000 he came on as a second half substitute. As a result of that he was awarded this little memento which you can see here. Substitutes weren't allowed in those days, but because it was an unofficial international, Sepp got his first taste of playing a game in an England shirt. His opportunity for a full cap came in October, with Leicester riding high in the second division, when he was selected to play for England in Belfast against Northern Ireland. And here we can see his cap from that game. Also in October he was selected to represent the Football League against Scotland, and this medal was awarded to him because he was selected as a travelling reserve for the Football League against Northern Ireland. The Leicester City team can be seen here. The training facilities look pretty basic, muddy pitch, trained at Filbert Street. There was also a car park outside Filbert Street that they trained on. And one of the players who established himself that season, even though he had played in previous seasons, was the centre half, or centre back as we call them these days, Percy Grosvenor. Here we have a picture of Percy. He was a regular right through until the Second World War. We've been very fortunate within the last year to have met with Percy's family, who have shared with us very many photographs from Percy's career and from Percy's family life. Really interesting. The 1936-37 season was one of those seasons that goes down in the club's history. It started quite badly, despite winning 5-0 in the second game of the season, beating Bradford Park Avenue. Arthur Lockett, the manager, resigned because of differences with the board. The club drifted, and by October they were in 21st position in the second division, and then they appointed a man called Frank Womack, who effected one of the biggest turnarounds in the club's history. He had been manager of Grimsby Town. He had taken Grimsby to 5th position in the old First Division. He made 2 key signings very early on. The first was Nottingham Forest's winger Eric Stubbs, and the second was Derby County's England centre forward, who we mentioned earlier in this video, to come in as centre forward. People felt that at this stage Jack Bauer was probably, past his best. Here we have a picture of Bauer's playing golf with Di Jones, a Wales international, in the side, and Eugene O Callaghan. And Bauer's performance for the rest of that season was phenomenal, aided by crosses from Eric Stubbs on the wing. In the 27 games remaining in the season after he signed for the club, he scored 33 goals, and the club gradually climbed the table, and they finally made top spot after defeating Tottenham Hotspur 4-1 in the very last game of the season, and they went up as second division champions. Here we have a picture of the players and the directors celebrating promotion at Peckleton Manor, the home of Arthur Needham, who was one of the original founder directors of Leicester City, and his son WSG Needham was a chairman in future years. You can see Arthur in the centre of the picture, the elderly gentleman sitting there, and Sepp Smith's got his arm around his shoulders. Another picture from that party shows Sepp Smith and Jack Bowers, 2 of the Leicester stars of that season, with Arthur Needham's granddaughter, a little girl called Jane, who today, Jane Palmer, is still an avid fan of the club. At the end of the season, the clubs in the First Division, together with the 2 promoted clubs, which were Leicester City as champions and Blackpool, were each presented with a limited edition ceramic cup, loving cup, here by Sir Francis Joseph, who was president of Stoke City. This was to commemorate the coronation of the new king, George VI, and it's still in the club's collection. It's on display and reception. The idea was for clubs to celebrate or to toast the king or the queen's health at the first match every new year. The promotion celebrations continued into the summer. In August, there was a function at the Grand Hotel in Leicester, a big dinner and the presentation of the medals, but before that the club had been on an Eastern European tour during the close season of 1937. They visited 4 countries. They'd been to Romania, they'd been to Hungary, they went to what was then Yugoslavia and what was then Czechoslovakia, and they played 5 games. In the club's photographic archive we have a record of this tour. There's a photograph of the players, or some of the players, on a train. I think it's in Hungary, this particular picture, with Arthur Chandler and Di Jones at one of the windows, and Frank Womack, the manager, at another, talking to somebody on the platform. The whole tour was based, they travelled around all of these countries by rail. There's another photograph which shows the players having a meal at Hotel Bristol in Budapest, and there's also a photograph of the players in the Hungarian Parliament in Budapest. We also have newspaper reports. There's a report in Romanian of Leicester's game against Venus Bucharest, which Leicester unfortunately lost, and there's another report of a game against Bratislava, which unfortunately again Leicester City lost. The following season started quite optimistically. On the front of the Sports Budget magazine there was a picture of Billy Frame, the club's right back, the manager Frank Womack, the captain Sepp Smith with the 2nd Division shield. The club didn't do too badly that season, bearing in mind they'd just come back up. They finished a reasonable 16th position. Billy Frame on the picture there is quite an interesting character. He played 220 games for Leicester in the league before the war. He played a further 220 games for Leicester during the war in the wartime regional leagues. When he retired, he spent part of his time as landlord of the Griffin Inn in Belgrave Gate. Early into the 1938-39 season, Leicester City made a very significant signing. They signed a young 19-year-old Welshman from Arsenal called Mal Griffiths. Griffiths had scored 5 goals in 9 games for Arsenal the previous season, as Arsenal had won the league title, the league championship. He became a very significant player for Leicester City over the years. He became a Wales international and was still playing for the club in 1956. This photograph shows him on his first day at Leicester being met at the station by Leicester City officials prior to his signing. At the end of 1938-39, Leicester City were relegated and Frank Womack was replaced as manager by the ex-Burnley and ex-Crystal Palace manager Tom Bromillow. But his first season only lasted for 3 games because of the outbreak of war in September 1939. The third and final game of that season was against West Ham United, a 2-0 win at Filbert Street. The final thing I want to show you today is a letter, or the start of a letter, which the club wrote to season ticket holders in December of 1939, because season ticket holders were beginning to question the value of their season ticket, as they'd only seen 3 games. The letter goes on to say that the club would provide a discount of 10 shillings, which is 50p, off the next season ticket when football was resumed. Now the fans had to wait a long time because football wasn't resumed, league football wasn't resumed for 7 years. Well, that concludes our survey of the 1930s. Thank you very much for watching. Next time we'll be looking at the 1940s. This was a decade which began with the club in war. The ground was bombed, the club nearly went out of existence, and it finished with the club reaching its first FA Cup final. It was a remarkable decade. I look forward to sharing this with you next time. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.